Okay. So I'll be continuing to talk about that which can't be spoken of, because it's the only way to arrive at the experience of that which can't be spoken of, that we have. Even when we talk about consciousness, and even if you get to the point of recognizing, by using the understandings that you have, even if you get to the point of recognizing that your consciousness, experiencing consciousness, that what you see in your visual field is you, that there is nothing but that. Even if you get to a point where you understand this, you have a deep understanding of this, so much so that you can actually see it to be so. You can actually see your visual field as consciousness itself, and you can actually experience consciousness being conscious of consciousness. That's still a conceptual understanding. If you actually experience consciousness, experiencing consciousness, you'll experience nothing. It's interesting, you know, that this journey, or this path, the way it's spoken of oftentimes, is one in which it begins with the recognition that everything you thought was true isn't true. Begins with the recognition that you're not who you thought you were, right? Begins with the recognition that you're not the body. Begins with the recognition that there is no objective world, that materialism is not the truth. However, as the process continues, what comes to be so is that you come to realize that who you think you are is the truth. And the idea that you're your body is the truth. And the idea that the world is objective is the truth. This is the paradoxical aspect of the truth. In order to grasp it conceptually, we have to start by negating what we thought was true. But upon negating what we thought was true, we get to a dead end. Because if you succeed in negating what you thought was true, where does it leave you? If you're going to spend the rest of your life in a cave, you can pull it off. Because you don't have to deal with the reality in which everybody agrees that, you know, there's an objective world and that you are a person and so forth. But if you're going to live in the world and you come to a place of success in understanding that these things are not real, that you are not a person, that you are not the body and so forth, you have to finish the process. This is why in Zen, the Enzo, right? Do you know what the Enzo is, right? It's the circle, right? It's considered to be a very powerful symbol, the circle, right? And the Enzo is a calligraphy of brushwork in which the brush touches the paper and circles around and comes back and meets where it started. So it's not just that it's a circle, it's describing a process in which you leave where you are and go to some place. You could talk about this as the process of realization. You leave where you are, you leave the idea that you thought you were a person, and move through this process of negation, of seeing, supposedly seeing things as they are. But then as this circle continues, it ends up bringing you back to where you started. So that's why you hear in Zen, for example, they say before enlightenment, carry wood or chop wood. After enlightenment, carry wood or chop wood. Another way of saying the same thing is that when you become enlightened, the mountain is not a mountain. And the completion of the enlightenment is the mountain is a mountain. So the non-dual experience is an experience in which things are as they are, and the way things are is that they are not the way they are, and they are the way they are. It would be a good exercise for you, if you haven't listened to some of the pure non-dual teachings, that there's a few teachers out there that teach pure non-dual teachings. I forget the guy's name. His name is Parsons. I'll send you a link if you're on the email list. But it would be good for you to listen to them speak and present the pure non-dual experience in which they say there is no one here, nothing is happening. This is incomprehensible. And they speak from that experience. They speak from that experience as if that is the truth, that's the reality, that is the truth, and that they're experiencing that reality. But one of the things that confuses people when they listen to somebody like that talk is that that person still uses the bathroom, that person still says the word I, that person still eats food, right? That person still participates in what they say doesn't exist. So the reason I think it's valuable to listen to a pure non-dualist teacher is so that you can recognize that while what they're saying is true, you can listen to people, interact with them, and see that you can't really win an argument with a person that speaks from that place because it is true. But the thing about it that's important to understand is that that's an incomplete circle. In order to complete the circle, you have to experience the truth as being non-conceptual, as being incomprehensible, and then you have to come back and comprehend that it's incomprehensible. So now it's not incomprehensible because you comprehended that it's incomprehensible, you see. So you're not who you thought you were, right? And you can actually see the truth of that, become a seer of the truth. You can see the truth of that. And then you come back to see that the actual non-dual experience is one in which you are who you thought you were. See, the mind can't have these two things exist at the same time. But they do. You know, that you are who you thought you were, but the you that is being who you thought you were is experiencing that that's an appearance. See, that's the distinction. That you are who you thought you were, but now you know that's an appearance. However, in the world in which we live, like they say, you're in the world but not of the world. However, in the world in which we live, the agreement that we're operating with amongst ourselves as human beings is that it's not an appearance, that it's real. And so you have to play the game. But now you know it's a game. And so you don't take it seriously as you took it before. You have a way of being in the world now that allows you to experience freedom from suffering. Because the suffering is that you think that you are your body, you think that you are the personality, and you think that that's all there is and that that's real. That's the source of the suffering. Because As soon as you think that you are the body and you think you are the personality and you think time is real, right, then you're suffering from your perception of that which is impermanent. You're suffering from that which is changing all the time. You're suffering from being a mind in which you conceive of things in such a way that you keep comparing them to what's happening and you are dissatisfied. You can, at any particular point in time, if you're paying attention, you can notice dissatisfaction. You can notice dissatisfaction, right? What do I mean? I mean, you can notice, if you pay attention, that you would rather have more money. You would rather look different than you look physically. You would rather be smarter than you are, right? On and on and on. And this goes right down to the momentary experience that you're having. You know, you would rather there be no traffic on the way home. You'd rather that you don't have to go to the bathroom because it's an inconvenience. On and on and on. It goes down to the most minute things. You even would rather to have things that don't exist be different. This is how crazy gets, right? Right? You would imagine, you would dream, and you would wish that your dreams were different dreams. So you would even rather have things that don't exist be different, right? So this is how crazy is. So how do you get out of the crazy, right? Well, it's the way you get out of the crazy is not to try and get out of the crazy. It's a Chinese handcuff. You don't try and get out of being crazy. You just recognize that crazy is crazy. And then you look to see what would be a way of being in the world that would be consistent with non-duality. Well, it's important to understand that non-duality, the only way you're going to experience non-duality is to experience that you don't exist. That's what non-duality is, right? Because your experience and the conditioned experience that you have of yourself is that it's you and there's the world, that's duality, right? It's you and there are other people, that's duality. When you experience the truth that there is no you, then what's left? If you experience the truth that there is no you, then what's left? All that's left is what's happening. But then you see that part of what's happening is you. Do you follow this? When you experience non-duality, you're experiencing non-duality because you're clear that you don't exist. So if you don't exist, what's left? All what's left is just what's happening. That's all that's left. But part of what's happening is you. So you see how you come back into the picture? Nothing changes. You were always free. You were always free. The whole idea of not being free is an illusion. You were always free. So we have to talk about this in a way that kind of moves you through the enso, you see. And so one way to talk about this that can be useful is to, we often talk about death. Death is an important aspect of this process, right? Because dying, the dying that we speak of is the dying of something that doesn't exist. So one way to engage with this process, to really be in the process, is to experience that you are in hospice now. You are in hospice now, right? Instead of waiting until you're told that you have a specific date of departure, you're in hospice now. And start to recognize that and start to experience dealing with the loss of what you considered yourself to be. And of course, the product of that is the discovery that you lose nothing, that death isn't real. The thing that's important to realize about dreaming is that when you're dreaming, it occurs to you that that's real, right? And when you wake up from the dream, this is all there is to get about dreaming. The rest of it is just, gossip. You know, it's just a waste of energy. When you wake up from a dream, and you're relieved, especially if it's a dream that is uncomfortable, right? You're relieved that it wasn't actually true, wasn't actually real. The question is, can you see that the reality that you consider to be real is no different than that? It's no different than that. And it's possible to wake up from that dream the same way you wake up from a dream that you wake up from when you're asleep. And if you wake up from that dream, right, then you begin to experience what's actually going on all the time. You're not confused anymore. It becomes possible to be clear about what's happening. And by the way, that clarity is not, as I mentioned before, that clarity is not clarity in terms of you can conceptually understand what's going on. This is very important. If you're experiencing things as they are, you don't know what's happening. If you're experiencing things as they are, you don't know what's happening. Knowledge takes the reality of the way things are and turns it into something much smaller than it is. Do you understand? A tree, I mentioned this earlier, you know, when you learn that a tree is a tree, it gets dumbed down to be what the word is. And then when you look at a tree, you see the word tree, and it's like that's the same tree as all trees. And it becomes something that you don't give much attention to. When you wake up and see the truth, you realize you don't know what that is. In fact, you don't know what anything is. And at the very same time you don't know what anything is, awareness is knowing what everything is. So it's paradoxical in a sense, right? But what I mean by it is that awareness knows what everything is, and the way it knows everything is to know that everything is nothing, is to know that everything is incomprehensible, and at the same time, it is to know that everything is something and it can be comprehended. Both things happen at the same time, 100% in both arenas happen at the same time. Don't try and understand this. Don't try and understand this. I'm talking about something that is an experience, but it can't be held in a conceptual mind. It can't be understood conceptually, right? Because the conceptual mind is dealing with things that can be comprehended in the normal way that we think about things. That it is something and not, it's one thing and not another thing. But in this reality, it's one thing and another thing. There's this fear that you're going to disappear. You know, there's this fear that you'll go crazy, right? But you don't have to worry about going crazy. You are crazy. This is about going sane. The reality of it is that the direct path is seeing the beginning and the end from the beginning. That doesn't mean that you won't have to go through the process, because going through the process has to do with reconditioning your brain and your mind, right? But you can see the truth all along. You can see things as they are even while you're living in the distortion of the whole thing. Do you understand? You can see things as they are even while you're living in the distortion of the thing. You can understand that thinking can't get you there even while you're thinking. So it's something that requires diligence. It's something that requires patience. It's something that you have to keep coming back and touching the truth. That's why coming to class and practicing meditation is so important. In Buddhism, they call it the refuge, the three gems. You know, the community that you belong to of people who see these things for what they are and are committed to them. The truth itself, which is the teaching, right? And then the Buddha, the Sangha, and the Dharma, right? The Buddha is the true nature, your true nature. So you have the three things that you can depend on. Is your true nature is already what it is. The teaching is there available to you, right? And then the community, whether that community is this community of people in the class, or there are communities all over the place for these things. If you look, you know, there are meditation centers, there are Zen centers, There's all kinds of organizations and people around the world now, more than ever before, of people where there are communities of like-minded people, people who are interested in liberation and realization. So it's important to look. That's one of the reasons why I mentioned in the recent past about my participation in this Zen Center in Ithaca. That's a community, right? And when you're there and you're involved and participating in that community and you're listening to the teacher teach and there are other people there, if we're doing it on Zoom and you can see all the faces of all the other people there, right? You experience that you're part of this awareness that exists there. You're not alone, in the world in which you're dealing with people that don't see things this way, right? You can relax and take part in and enjoy the spirit of it, enjoy the connection to the conscious awareness that the people in the community have. So I really suggest that you consider that for yourself. To look and see, where can you participate with other people that are involved with this. I mean, this is obviously one place that you can do that. I mean, this class has become, as I mentioned earlier, it's become just by its own nature, it's become an advanced meditation class. I say it's an advanced meditation class, but in reality, it's just more of an authentic meditation class. In other words, we're talking about meditation in terms of what the real value of it, what the real use of it is, so that it's not just about stress reduction. Okay, see you next time.